Hello everyone! So after talking about my trips to Ie-jima and Tokashiki-jima, which are two of the islands that are accessible by boat from Okinawa-honto, so the main island of Okinawa, and also made a video about Zamami-jima and how to get there and what to do on Zamami-jima, because it's one of my favorite islands that you can access by boat from Okinawa-honto. I thought I would extend the topic today and talk a little bit more about all the islands that are accessible by boat from Okinawa-honto. Well, maybe not all the islands, but the most popular ones that most people know about, and whether I would recommend them for a day trip or a weekend trip or a long weekend trip, and how to get there. Yeah, let's talk about the general way of how you get to these islands first. So most of these islands, pretty much all of these islands, are only accessible by boat from Okinawa-honto. The one notable exception is Kume-jima, which is also accessible by airplane. So for that island, you actually have a choice between going there by boat or going there by plane. And I have tried before to go to Kume-jima by boat, and I have tried twice and I have failed twice, because the one thing with Kume-jima is it's pretty far out, which means that often, especially during typhoon season, you get pretty high waves that makes it inaccessible by boat. So if you really want to go, maybe shell out the money for the flight. So unfortunately, flying there is 3 times as expensive as taking the boat. But I did consider it during my last year on Okinawa. But yeah, obviously then this whole pandemic thing happened and I never managed to go to Kume-jima. But it is one of the islands you could fly to. So all of these islands, these other islands I'm going to talk about, are only accessible by boat. And the thing with going anywhere by boat from Okinawa-honto is that first of all you have to figure out which port you need to go from, or which port you need to go to catch a boat to wherever you want to go. Because unfortunately Okinawa doesn't only have one main port, but it has a whole bunch of ports situated around the island. And obviously the reason for that is if you want to go to an island that's on the northeast of Okinawa-honto, you wouldn't want to go from Naha, which is in the southwest of the island, and then have to go all the way around the island by boat to the northeast to reach the island you want to go to, but rather you would want to go from a port in the northeast and just go straight to the island. Let's start with islands that I would recommend for a day trip and the ports you would have to go to go there. So as I said in my video about Ie-jima, it's one of the islands I would recommend for a day trip. However, it's one of the more bigger islands. So it's a little bit bigger than the really small islands. So it is big enough to make it into a weekend trip too. So if you want to go to Ie-jima, you have to go to Motobu Port, which is on the Motobu Peninsula. And Motobu Port is a little bit special in terms of the other islands it also services. So Motobu Port also services Ie-jima, which is kind of north, I want to say, maybe northwest from Okinawa-honto. And it's definitely one of the longer ferry rides. However, it also has ferries that go all the way to Zamami-jima, which is an island way, way north from Okinawa-honto, and to Kagoshima. These ferries go to islands that are really, really far north from Okinawa, so it takes days to get there. It's not just a 4 or 5 hour trip. It's like an overnight ferry or a 3-4 day ferry. So that makes Motobu Port a little bit special. However, the Ie-jima ferry is just a very short inter-island ferry. It's a 30-minute trip and you will be there in no time. If you want to know more about Ie-jima, it's famous for the mountain on the island, which is like kind of sugar cone shaped, and it's visible from Okinawa-honto on a clear day. The next island I want to talk about is also accessible by boat, obviously, and it's Minna-jima. And Minna-jima is known as the croissant island because it's shaped like a croissant. So in order to get to Minna-jima, you have to go to Toguchi Port. And Toguchi Port is also in the northwest of Okinawa-honto, also on the Motobu Peninsula. However, it's a little bit further along the Motobu Peninsula than Motobu Port. So Toguchi Port does have free parking, however it does get really crowded really fast. I was like kind of stuffed away in a non-parking spot where they were like, oh yeah, I guess your car will fit here, which was kind of funny. And it's a really, really short ferry ride. It's, I don't know, it was maybe 20-30 minutes at a maximum. And I went there with a friend. I didn't know what to expect. And it's a really, really small island. You can basically walk all across the island in maybe 2 hours or something. And you have a main beach, which is pretty much where most people stay. So it's kind of like a beach getaway island. So people take the boat and then they have a beach day. You can borrow parasols and floaties, and they offer a bunch of water activities. And then if you actually walk away from that beach and you walk like kind of straight, and then when you get into the village to the right, you will actually get to another beach where we have only seen, I think, 3 other people the whole day. So that's where we stayed and went snorkeling and so on. And when we got back to the main beach, there were a bunch of people. Alright, so the next island you could go to for a day trip would be Tsuken-jima. And Tsuken-jima you could also stay overnight. It does have guest houses and it is known as a weekend getaway island. So in order to get to Tsuken-jima, you will have to go to Hishikiya Port. I hope I didn't butcher that. But yeah, it's called Hishikiya Port. And Hishikiya Port is in the, I want to say northeast. It's not really the north, but like the east part of the island. It's right below Hamahiga Island, more or less. So you have Hamahiga Island, which is pretty well known since it has a really cool beach. And that island is, by the way, accessible via bridge, so you could just drive there. But there is like a small tip below Hamahiga Island, and that small tip is where you will find Hishikiya Port. And Tsuken-jima is known as the Carrot Island. So that is not because it's shaped like a carrot, but rather it's famous for producing a lot of carrots. Tsuken-jima mainly consists of farmland, and a lot of the farming that's done on this island for some reason is carrot farming. Don't ask me why, but yeah, that seems to be the thing on Tsuken-jima, carrot farming. But it's still a very enjoyable island. They have several lookout points. They have a beach, so you can go swimming. And they also have like a carrot-themed lookout point. Although in itself it's not very exciting, but yeah, you can take a picture of the carrot house. Then the fourth island that I would recommend for a day trip from Okinawa-honto is Kudaka-jima. And Kudaka-jima is also known as the Island of Gods. And generally when you go to Kudaka-jima, you shouldn't go into the water, so no swimming on Kudaka-jima. The island is known to be sacred, and in Okinawan tradition, it's considered the island of gods, and it's sacred, and you should not go swimming. But just for the historical aspect, it might be nice to visit. I unfortunately never made it out there. I had plans again last summer, but unfortunately again with the pandemic it just didn't happen. However, if you do want to go there, the ferry does go from Azama port, which is in the southeast of the island, I want to say. And it's a very short ferry ride, so you can definitely do it as a day trip. So now the majority of the other islands are serviced from Tomalin port, which I talked about before. It's where you would catch the ferry to Zamami-jima or Tokashiki-jima. And it's also the port where you would catch a ferry to Aka-jima, so it services all three Kerama islands, Tokashiki, Aka, and Zamami. And then you can also catch a ferry to Tonaki, and if you stay on that ferry, it will go on to Kume-jima. And Kume-jima, as I said before, you could also fly to, and it's really a trade-off between time and money and how reliable the mode of transportation is. And Kume-jima is known for like a sandy strip on the side where you can go by boat. It's like the thing to do on Kume-jima, and the sandy strip is known as Hate no Hama, and a lot of people will do a day tour or half day tour to the strip during their stay on Kume-jima. And it's also known for pottery, so they do have a couple of do-it-yourself pottery classes where you can make some pottery on yarn, and then they will burn it in their oven and parcel it to you later on. And the last island that's serviced from Tomalin port is Aguni Island. And to be honest, I don't know anything about Aguni. I assume it's as beautiful as all the other islands. So if you want to go, by all means go. Obviously, if you are interested in going to Tokashiki-jima or Zamami-jima, check out my video about my weekend on Tokashiki-jima, or what I think about Zamami-jima, that I uploaded a couple of weeks ago. And with the Kerama Islands, so Tokashiki, Aka, and Zamami, I would generally recommend to stay at least one night overnight. However, you can do it as a day trip since there are speedboats going to all of these islands. And the other thing with Tokashiki, Aka, and Zamami is that you have inter-island ferries. So in theory, you could go to Tokashiki, then move on to Aka, move on to Zamami, and then go back to Tomalin port on Okinawa-honto. So the same for Tonaki, Kume, and Aguni, but you should probably only do them as a weekend trip or a long weekend trip, So for Kume, I know for sure the ferry takes between 3 to 4 hours. So my plan was to go there Saturday morning and return Monday morning. So yeah, you should really do it as a weekend trip or even as a long weekend trip. And I assume ferry times are similar for Tonaki and Aguni. So that's all the islands that are serviced from Tomalin port. So now going on to two last islands, and those are Iheya and Izena Island, and they are both serviced from Unten port. And Unten port is again back on the Motobu Peninsula in the northwest of Okinawa-honto. And I had planned to go to one of these islands. Honestly, I don't know if they are famous for anything, but I had seen stunning pictures and I thought, why not? And my plan was actually to take my car with me to go there and to then travel around by car and sleep in my car and just rough it out for one night. But again, never happened because of the pandemic. However, they look like they are beautiful islands. Iheya and Izena are definitely some of the less known and less popular islands on this list, and I would highly recommend to check them out and give them a go. So now for all of these islands, pretty much all of them have accommodation on the island, so you could stay overnight. And some of them also have campgrounds. However, as far as I know, Minna-jima doesn't have accommodation on the island, so that you should really do as a day trip. And I'm not sure what the situation is with Kudaka-jima. So now, I mentioned this in my video about Zamami-jima. You will often get the better deals if you phone up or email like hotels or hostels on the island. So a lot of the hotels or hostels or guest houses on these smaller islands are not on any of the major booking sites. So no booking.com, no hotels.com, nothing like that. And the ones that are on these websites tend to be more on the expensive end. So if you want cheaper accommodation, it often is good to actually do a Google search for the island name and accommodation and see whether you can find a list of accommodations that speak English. And if you can email them or phone them to get a price. And even if you can't do that, or even if you don't find accommodation that speak English, you sometimes can find a list with accommodations at least. And then you could go and ask a Japanese speaking friend for help, and maybe they can book the accommodation for you. And again, if you don't have Japanese speaking friends, by all means, go out there and make some. But yeah, this is your small orientation guide to islands around Okinawa-honto that you can easily visit as a day trip or weekend trip. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. It's kind of a wrap up for my Okinawa Island series. And I hope to see you back in, well, next week or in a couple of weeks, depending on how busy I am, for my next video. And yeah, I really love to showcase my love for Okinawa on this channel and my love for traveling, especially around Southeast Asia, as well as my life in academia, which means my life as during the time I was a PhD student, as well as my life right now as a postdoc. And I really hope to see you soon. So yeah, mata ne, see you soon. Bye.